Ivana Trump, the first wife of former US President Donald Trump, has died at the age of 73. Paramedics in Manhattan attended the scene after receiving calls of a woman in cardiac arrest overnight. The pair had 3 children together from their first marriage in 1977. They later divorced in 1992. Donald Trump released a statement this morning remembering her, calling her a wonderful, beautiful and amazing woman who led a great and inspirational life. Her pride and joy were her 3 children, Donald Jr., Ivanka and Eric. The US president now, Joe Biden, has arrived in Israel in his first trip to the Middle East as president. He is accompanied by the Secretary of State Antony Blinken and other officials too, kick-starting a 3-day visit to Israel and the West Bank before moving on to Saudi Arabia. Landing just outside Tel Aviv, President Biden met with Israel's President and Prime Minister as he reaffirmed his commitment to the region.
And now, as President, I'm proud to say that our relationship with the State of Israel is deeper and stronger, in my view, than it's ever been. And with this visit, we're strengthening our connections even further.
Joining us is Fox News reporter Trey Yingst. Trey, good morning to you. Good evening where you are. So what's the plan? What's on Biden's agenda here?
So there's a lot on the agenda when U.S. President Joe Biden holds meetings here in Israel. He arrived earlier today and he was met by Israeli President Isaac Herzog and Prime Minister Yair Lapid. It was a lot of pomp and circumstance, but very quickly the American and Israeli officials and leaders got down to business. They went and showed President Biden the Iron Dome missile defense system, a critical system here in Israel that's used to shoot down rockets from places like Gaza and Lebanon. We have seen it in action during conflict in this part of the world. And basically, President Biden wanted to reaffirm his support for the system that is partially funded by the United States and also look at some of the new Israeli technology that's being used to push back against Iranian aggression in the region.
US inflation has jumped by a new 40-year high, increasing by 9.1% over the financial year. That exceeds most forecasts by economists and has fueled expectation of more interest rate hikes. Experts estimated an 8.8% rise to the consumer price index by the end of June, but it went beyond that. Well, police have fired tear gas at protesters marching outside Sri Lanka's parliament as the country's economic crisis deepens. Recent demonstrations have forced the president to flee to the Maldives. The country's prime minister has become acting president despite calls from protesters for him to stand down.
Police versus the people on the streets of Colombo. Protesters who've come out in their thousands have no fear. Angry, defiant. Committed to removing the country's leaders. Latest show of rage against the people they blame for creating Sri Lanka's economic nightmare. Sri Lankans want President Gotabaya Rajapaksa gone for good, and he has fled the country.
China's foreign minister has issued Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong with a 4-point list of actions Australia must take to get the relationship back on the right track. It follows comments from China blaming the coalition government of being the root cause for bilateral breakdowns with Australia. Foreign Minister Wang Yi told Penny Wong to improve the relationship, Australia must treat China as a partner rather than a rival, seek common ground while shelving differences, reject manipulation by a third party, I guess that means the US, and both countries must build public support featuring positiveness and pragmatism. Let's go to our political analyst and professor at Curtin University for a Monday morning debrief here. I do love our debriefs, Joe Syracuse. Good morning to you. And this one now will pivot to China because China loves a list, don't they? Especially when they believe they're not at fault.
Good morning, Pete. Hey, look, this is a big deal. The Chinese foreign minister had a couple meetings after the G20, one with Secretary of State Blinken that lasted 5 hours and talked about the road ahead, and this one with Foreign Minister Wong. And I think it's very interesting because what he's saying with these conditions is that you give up everything you've ever believed in and anything you want to do with the United States and come back down this road. And what they're going to try to do is sort of divide Australia from the United States. And of course, they're looking at the chessboard here, Pete. Two of the three authors of the AUKUS arrangement, which is a big deal and all aimed at China, they're gone. Boris Johnson is gone, and Scott Morrison is gone, and there's no doubt in my mind that Jumping Joe is gone. There's no way that Biden's going to win re-election. In fact, he's barely going to make it through his term. So what the Chinese are doing is they're looking at Australia, and they're figuring out here, well, maybe we can cut a new deal. And they blamed everything, of course, on the last prime minister. And what they're saying is, we'll buy more of your iron ore, your coking coal, and we'll send your students back if you pay attention here. So I think it's a pretty bold move, but it's also one that reflects the reality that in the real world, democratic leaders come and go. Authoritarian leaders stay on forever.
Yeah. A couple of other matters now, especially foot and mouth in Bali. From a border perspective, is the government doing enough to stop it, in your opinion?
Well, the risk of foot and mouth disease coming into Australia is very, very concerning. We don't want that disease here. It would effectively wipe out some key parts of our agricultural industry. So we don't want that to happen. Look, sniffer dogs are just not going to be sufficient. We are concerned that people are already arriving in from Bali. They have been out, they've been standing in animal manure. They'll be bringing it in on their shoes. They'll be bringing it in on their suitcases. So we are concerned that there is a real risk that possibly foot and mouth disease has already come into Australia, but has not yet been detected.
Is it inevitable?
And that is very... Look, I don't think it's inevitable, and I think that our border forces and our biosecurity officials are doing the best that they can, but it really is up to the federal government now to just step in and make sure that there are appropriate measures in place, whether that means that we have to put in a greater regulation for people coming in from Indonesia, from Bali in particular, so that we can be assured that there is not foot and mouth disease coming into Australia. Now, I understand that Murray Watt is in Indonesia at the moment. Now, I hope he is taking seriously the threat of foot and mouth disease coming into Australia, and I'm sure that he is very concerned about that. So I hope that he is speaking to the Indonesian officials about what more measures can be put in place to prevent the disease leaving Indonesia, so that we're not just relying on stopping it at the border here.
The New South Wales government, as we just heard, has scrapped the plan to add a third flagpole to the Sydney Harbour Bridge, deciding to relocate the New South Wales state flag and then replace it with the Aboriginal flag. The New South Wales flag will instead be part of the new redevelopment of Macquarie Street in Sydney CBD. Premier Dominic Perrottet says the $25 million saved by not erecting a new pole will be spent on Indigenous initiatives. How will that assassination change Japan? And given what you've just said there about Abe essentially changing the political system in Japan, how does that all change now?
Well, in many respects, Abe's domestic and foreign policies will become even more entrenched. The LDP, his party, has predictably enjoyed, if I can put it perversely, a wave of popularity since the assassination. But more than that, Abe's foreign policies, which is really to position Japan as the primary strategic ally in the region, and its domestic policies, broadly known as Abenomics, which are largely inflationary policies, they will become even more entrenched. And even now, when I spoke to some Japanese colleagues over the last 2 days in government, they've essentially confirmed the same thing, that Abe's legacy now is even more assured because of this tragedy.
Have you got any clear understanding of why he was targeted, John?
I don't. It doesn't seem like it was for his political values. It might have been because he was associated with various religious or community groups, but we're not really clear, and not a lot of information has been released. But if there is a silver lining to all this, it is that there does not seem to be any international or external involvement. So at the very least, it won't be an international crisis.
Okay, John, appreciate sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Thank you. What's happened in our market since our housing market since the last time we spoke, Mark? I noticed that the auction rates in Sydney at least dropped to a 2-year low, I believe, on the weekend.
Yeah, that's right. So our clearance rates at auctions dropped to a 2-year low. They were slightly up from the previous week, but you have to remember this is off a much lower base. So if you go back 12 months from last weekend, there were about 2,100 auctions or properties put up for auction with a 74% clearance rate. If you fast forward to last weekend, you're looking at 1,500 places up for auction with around a 58% clearance rate. So not only is the denominator lower, but the numerator is lower too. So, you know, it's basically saying vendors are not putting properties on the market because they're concerned they're not going to get their price. We get this mismatch of vendors' expectations of what they think their property should be getting if they want to sell it, and with the price that purchasers are prepared to pay, which ultimately means you get less places available for sale.
Queensland has won a thriller of a Game 3 Origin decider in Brisbane that started with plenty of drama, didn't it, if you watched last night? 3 players were put out of the game with concussion in the opening minutes. Cam Murray, Selwyn Cobbo, Lindsay Collins all sidelined. Debutant Tom Dearden put Valentine Holmes over for Queensland's first, but the Blues hit back. Halves Nathan Cleary and Jerome Luai combining, and Jacob Saifidi had a try-on debut as well. The Maroons down to 2 at half-time thanks to Kurt Capewell's try before the Biff returned to State of Origin.
And there it is, there's a punch. Wow. There's punches thrown. Gagai's gone.
They're both throwing punches.
Both throwing punches. They'll both be gone.
I think once you've been clocked on the chin, you're entitled to throw a couple back in defence, if nothing else.
It was a cauldron, and it was boiling over, that's for sure. Matt Burton and Dane Gagai both sent to the bin. Kalen Ponga put Queensland in front, and then Ben Hunt sealed the series victory with quite a try.
It's Cleary. It tips over the top. Ben Hunt!
Wow.
Ben Hunt with the catch. He'll run away. Yo is chasing.